Comics the Magazine is the powerhouse periodical you need to have. From creator interviews to insightful articles, Comics delivers the best parts of the fandom each and every issue. It has an exclamation point in its name for a reason. So what are you waiting for? Get to your local comic shop and pick up the latest issue, and check out comicsthemagazine.com for more information. Comics the Magazine is what the fans are reading. Live from the 607, it's the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour, where we're talking everything movies, TV, comics, and entertainment. Join in the conversation on social media with the hashtag ODPH, because here we go. Welcome to an all-new edition of Fanlight Zone Presents. My name is Ken M. You know me as the host of the ODPH podcast. I'm also the editor-in-chief here at FLZ. To my left, you're right at home. He's one of our featured comic editors, and you also know him as the host of 607 TWS, The Wrestling Show. Please give a warm welcome to Rich.
Well, it is a tremendous week. We're still getting over the highs of, over the past few weeks, we're getting over the highs of the New York Knicks becoming your world champions of the NBA. And of course, Dan Housen representing as much. But now we get to talk comics with somebody that we love their work, love what they're doing. And they have not one, but two awesome books coming straight at you that you're going to find a ton about in a minute.
Yes, because mark the calendar right now. July 1st is Joey Esposito Day. Why? Because he has not one, but two books, as Rich alluded to, that you absolutely need to pick up at the comic shops. Both are very different, but both are absolutely mind-blowing because, let's face it, when you're going to dive into the world of serial killers in one and go into one of the most popular fandoms of all time in another with an ambitious take that no spoilers, but holy, it's going down. You don't want to leave the comic shops without it. And obviously, his pedigree from such books as Batman Urban Legends, Pawn Shop, Kickers, and of course, one half of the dynamic duo behind the indie hit sensation, legendary series, The Pedestrian.
Wow.
Please welcome to the show the writer of Killer Influences for IDW Dark and Power Rangers Unlimited for Boom Studios, the one and only Joey Esposito. Joey, what is going on?
Wow, that is the best intro I've ever received. Thank you so much. Well, I feel like I'm walking down the ramp right now. Dan Housen has uncursed me or whatever. Thanks for having me back. It's great to see you guys. And I'm gonna let that intro inflate my ego for the rest of the weekend for sure.
There you go. And you can just keep playing it over and over again. And just as you walk into a room, just hit it and just, go with it.
Just so everyone has what they need to know about me when I enter the room. Like these dudes say I'm good news. So
yeah, I think we have to start pre-recording for everybody, like after the show, just send them a posting. So if you ever need it, just hit the play button and it just goes. But the pedigree works because obviously your work does stand up. Two amazing books are coming out. Let's get into the first one because Killer Influences absolutely had us floored here at Fanlight Zone. How did this whole story come to be?
So Killer Influences was interesting because it was sort of kismet in the way that it happened, and that this was the launch of IDW CRIME. And so Killer Influences was an idea that IDW brought to me, and their premise was essentially a wannabe true crime YouTuber helps a serial killer build his brand. And that was sort of the one-line assignment. And so from there, I took it and developed it into what it is, the characters, the setting, the plot, all that stuff. But at the time, I had been reading, I'm always reading kind of any number of true crime books. And at that time, I was reading a book called Murderland by Caroline Fraser, it's like a memoir / true crime about the Pacific Northwest, specifically, the 70s and 80s, this apparent proliferation of serial killers that was happening there at the time. And her sort of thesis of the book is tying it back to environmental pollution. There's lots of lead smelters in that area and lots of just toxic chemicals that are sprinkled all around that sort of region. And she's basically connecting the dots of infamous serial killers who have roots or spent a significant amount of time in the Pacific Northwest, and how maybe lead poisoning or something like that could have contributed to altering their brain in such a way that they would go on to do what they did. Of course, it's not comprehensive, definitive evidence because there are obviously also thousands of people exposed to similar things who did not, as far as we know, abduct and murder people for a living. So I was sort of reading that as this opportunity came to me, and it all sort of just bled in together and meshed together really well to create what is now Killer Influences.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic. We were talking a little bit about it before we went on, because like I said, I got the privilege of reading it early before the FOC to put out a first look review that's up on the FamilyZone.com. But you kind of hit the elevator pitch there. But I want to kind of ask this on a separate. Did you feel any pressure? Because as you noted, it's the second book from the IDW crime line that's come out right behind Seven Wives. Like, I hate to use the word pressure, but was there any like pressure when you got this and was like, hey, not only are we asking you to come up with a story, but you're going to be the second hitter here. So good luck.
Yeah, I usually the second hitter is the one who bunts, right? So I did not bunt. I don't think this is a bunt.
No, absolutely not.
Full on swing. But no, I don't know that there was like additional pressure. I think what helped with that was the editor who brought it to me is Dave Wilgus, who is a great editor, also a writer. He writes a book called Showdown at Ignition Press. But I worked with him previously at DC on some Batman stuff. And so we were already friendly and had a good working relationship. And so the fact that we were doing this project together made me less, I guess, in my head about it being like a launch title or anything like that. I just wanted to make it as good of a #1 as I could. And then, with the issues that followed as well. I would say it was more exciting than anything. It felt like someone giving me a shot to do something like, that was a milestone of some kind. And so I was really honored by that.
Yeah, and definitely it was definitely not a bunt or sacrifice fly. Like, this is a home run completely.
Thank you.
especially kicking off the IDW crime line. See, I had the IDW dark mindset going in this because this does have such a horror feel to it.
For sure.
And going into the comic industry now, horror is booming right now. So and combining it with the crime element, like, what is the biggest draw to you to tap into this genre as a writer?
I think maybe part of why, horror is always kind of, sometimes it's like sort of subdued and there's just the hardcore fans who are following stuff. I think right now we're in a phase, like we were talking before recording, about these low budget horror movies that blew up at the box office. And I think like horror is attractive right now because of the actual horrors of the world. And I think that, the horror genre in general is a way to process information about the cruelties of reality that, we can't fully wrap our heads around in terms of like the rules of society. And horror lets you kind of like remove those rules, remove those guardrails of like civilized society, and just be like explore these things as depraved as they truly are, but like in a fantastical way, which I think in turn allows you to synthesize your feelings about world news or politics or whatever it might be through the lens of the horror that you're reading or watching. So I think that might be why we're both seeing like proliferation of more people creating in the horror space, but also like the desire to consume it. Excuse me. And for me personally, like horror is my favorite thing. And, combining it with like a suspense crime thriller and sort of like the Silence of the Lambs kind of way is just, there's just nothing more appealing to me, I think, than just like, you watch a movie or read like a thriller that's just like makes your skin crawl a little bit.
Yeah.
And it just feels like you have like bugs under your skin. It's a terrible feeling, but I love getting that feeling because it means that like the atmosphere is super effective. And so that's sort of the vibe I wanted to go after on this one.
Yeah, you're definitely onto something with like the horror in different times and of course socio-political atmospheres, because like if you go through the horror booms throughout time, 1930s is when we had a lot of that. We all know what's happened in the 1930s. Fast forward to the Cold War, we got even more, and into the 80s when it was unsure and uncertain times economically and everything like that going on. And so it does make sense that now we're back into a time where things are kind of going crazy in the world. So why not have the boogeyman on the screen to kind of, we're already terrified of like real life stuff, so you might as well have a boogeyman who can entertain you. And I think there really is something to that. But what you did with this book in particular, and I mentioned this, like I said, I love how we have all these conversations off air. Maybe one day, if there's enough interest, we'll have to do like a pre-show thing on like some kind of like subscription basis or whatever. But
get that money.
Yeah, there you go.
You're like Dan House.
All the human money. But what I was going with is this is one of those crime books. Like IDW Crime is doing a good job. They're launching the imprint. We have seen some other ones as well. But this book, because of the I think the more horror-esque portion of it, you went at a different angle. Usually with these a lot of these crime stories and true crime stories, we're getting a whodunit. You're trying to figure out who the killer is. You're trying to figure out what's going on. But here, that's not the case. It's right up front. You know, the audience knows who the killer is because it's part of the story, which creates this great dynamic between the two main characters, Kylie and Melvin. And so how was it writing that dynamic?
It was tough. It's like I think it's like a hard line to walk because of the tone of the book. You know, it's satirical, it's kind of darkly funny, but it is dealing with pretty serious matter, especially like this young woman who is confronting a serial killer by herself. And not perceiving how dangerous that could be. So you want it to feel true to the satirical nature of the thing, but also base it in a reality where you feel like the character could be in danger. So it was, you know, lots of drafts of conversation, especially like scenes where they're talking about their plans or talking about logistics about how things are going to work. In issue one of my favorite scenes is when she finally, you know, is in his little slaughterhouse area, and they're just like, she's like basically giving him the hard sell on her idea. You know, she kind of casually throws out like that he's going to have to change his presentation of bodies because it's not theatrical enough or something, which is like so fucked up.
Yeah.
But also very, very funny, I think. But you know, it can lose that. It can very easily tip into like territory that is just in bad taste, which also has its place, I feel like. But I don't think that's this story. So hopefully we managed to walk that line a little bit.
Oh, I think you did, because just bringing that up without spoiling the whole scene, you literally, it feels like you said, there is a threat to it. And it feels like it's almost her Hail Mary of like, okay, well, I'm pretty much dead. So let's just throw the Hail Mary. And then where it goes from there is like, you're just kind of like, oh, it's intriguing because there is like that question that you brought up is, why would you go confront a serial killer? Why would you hunt down and then confront a serial killer? And the funny part is, in a lot of ways, the genius of it is that serial killer has the same thought. And I'll leave it at that without spoiling it.
Yeah.
And that I think and then that's what leaves this conversation, which is, like you said, it's a crazy conversation, but it's so good in the book. And I don't think anybody, even with us kind of giving them a little bit of insight, I don't think anybody's going to see it coming, because you're going to read this conversation like I did a couple times and go, wow, that really worked. Like, this is great. Like,
thank you. What a great compliment.
And especially too with how Kylie's fascination with making, you know, with Melvin too. What do you think it is about having the serial killer in that role that almost makes it like a celebrity in a sense? Because without giving too much away, you know, that's kind of the perception that Kylie looks. But then you think about with shows like Dexter, that, you know, you're rooting for a serial killer.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's like what's intriguing about true crime as a whole, is that sometimes it's asking you to identify with people who have done horrendous, atrocious, objectively terrible things. You know, I think the worst of true crime is what you're talking about in terms of like lionizing serial killers, or like really getting into the nitty gritty of how they committed their crimes, or like what their methodologies were, you know, digging into crime scene details and stuff like that. There's this like sick, gross element to some folks who are obsessed with the sort of lore of serial killers versus people who are intrigued by, you know, investigations, or, you know, crime scene science, or psychology, or victim restitution, or anything like that. You know, like there's so many different elements to true crime, and so often the thing that is focused on is the perpetrator and the crime itself, where the victims sort of fall by the wayside. And so I think like what we're sort of satirizing here are the sort of like armchair detectives, these armchair sleuths who think that they maybe have better insight than you know, a 20-year police detective or whatever it could be, but are like presenting their theories out there with such confidence and gusto that other people inevitably pick up on it. And that's sort of where you start to get these weird bubbles on the internet of conspiracy theories, or things that turn into like a creepypasta or whatever it could be. Like, there's people doing this stuff unethically and irresponsibly because they're allowed to, because the internet is kind of free for all, right? So like anyone talking on the internet authoritatively about anything is going to have people who believe them. And so that's kind of where we're coming from in terms of how Kylie is looking at a serial killer versus like how she actually should be if she was actually interested in like these more journalistic approaches to telling the story that she's looking to tell.
Yeah, because you can definitely tell, like, there's a lot of complexity to this. Like, it's not just a very straightforward story by any means. That's one of the best parts of this book. When you read it, yeah, because you think you know where it's going in one direction, but as you start getting further and you start seeing that dynamic form, there's a lot of curves that are thrown in, or seeds planted, should I say, for where we go, and especially with how it ends. No spoilers. Go buy the book. Go buy multiple copies. Let's face it, you want to get more, but you want
great covers to get multiple copies.
Yeah, listen, I can't fault on that. I mean, the artwork in this is amazing too. But to see like where it goes, it just kind of it dabbles in so many themes. Like I say, it does so much to stand out from just being a normal crime story. And I think that's just one of the key things to it.
Yeah. You have somebody who wants to be like modern day famous, if you will, like what you were talking to, and then you have somebody who wants to be infamous. And those don't usually come together, because to be infamous usually means you can't be caught in that line of work, right? Like, because when you start throwing out names like Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer and so on and so forth, you're like, oh, they never got caught. We can have all the theories we want, but they never got caught. And so that's what you aspire to be. It sounds weird to say that in a job, but that's what you aspire to be if you're a serial killer. And on the other hand, she's like, hey, I can use this kind of like setup, like it's almost like stacking the deck in her own favor.
Yeah,
I'm on the inside, you're telling me what you're doing. I get to report all of this. I get to look like the genius, even though I'm technically an accessory to this. I'm going to and that's where the fallout, like I said, without spoiling anything, and that's just issue one. Like you learned issue one. Imagine what you're getting into going forward, and that's why not only should you make sure you get the first copy if you didn't already order it, which you should have, but if you didn't, that means you need to put it on the pull list, because
absolutely
one of those ones.
Thank you. I'm glad that you brought that up, because there is a moment in issue one where they address that directly, because from her perspective, she's like presenting this idea of like, don't you want to be like, as well known as like a Ted Bundy or a BTK killer? And he's like, no, they got caught. That's why you know their names. So of course I don't want to do that, which is like, I don't know, an interesting point of view to consider from like this obviously broken mind, but like he doesn't see himself as like one of those like lesser kind of killers who is going to get tracked down and caught and going to go through a court case and all this stuff. And yet he still wants that recognition, but he understands that he's too good to be caught. And so I think that's part of why he's like open to Kylie's unhinged proposal.
Which is, once again, ironic, goes back. That's how a lot of them get caught anyways, is because they're too good to get caught. I mean,
they go too far.
You go down the list, and there's reasons, once again, we could do a whole separate thing on just like
it's very dark, very bleak,
but it's all cool that you put all of that in there, because it is a very, it makes it real, because that's what it's supposed to feel. It's supposed to have that feel, and definitely like even what you're saying about the backstory, and maybe it's some toxicity is the reason why some people went. It just makes sense. There's just a really cool backstory to it that you're not normally getting, and it does bite in a reality. But the other thing is the book has tremendous art. So Valeria Bergo is the artist on the book, and wow, fantastic. Was there anything that you came up with or that she drew that could possibly have gotten like that got axed because you went too far, or was IDW ever good on everything and you guys good on everything?
I mean, there was things that I wrote that I was like, this might be too much, but we'll see what happens. And no one ever said anything, so I guess we're okay. But yeah, Valeria's great. What was so great about working with her on this specifically is that, like we talked about, there's a lot of nuance. There's it's about some heavy dark shit, but it's also kind of funny. But it also requires acting from the characters that is, I think, a little bit more subtle than you might see in a typical superhero comic, for example.
Mm.
You know, the difference between a creepy smirk and like a sly smirk, and things like that. And Valeria is very good at emoting her character. She's very good at body language and things like that. So knowing that she could handle those sort of subtleties was really helpful in the writing process. But then also the moments where we go full gore. You know, I think there's one moment in particular in issue 1 that's pretty gnarly, and that just like that's the page I'm like sending to friends and stuff. I'm like, check this shit out. Yeah, which is like fucked up because it is a book about, you know, I'm not trying to trivialize the crimes or anything, but like a fantastic rendering of a brutal crime is still a work of art. So there's more of that as we go on, and I think she's really good at building that suspense. Especially issue 2 has some great moments with that, where it's like, you know, Kylie and Melvin's lives are parallel but divergent, and she's able to like build suspense within a single page by telling like their sort of like concurrently happening stories, which is really good. So yeah, working with her has been awesome.
Yeah, and I think I know exactly the scene you're talking about, but well, obviously no spoilers. Everybody needs to go get this book on IDW Crime. It's going to be one. The minute it's in your hands and you get done, you're going to be like, you're going to have that reaction. If you don't, I don't think you have a pulse, to be honest with you.
And it's 40 pages for $5. What a deal!
Yeah, like
come on.
But the weird part is it doesn't feel like 40 pages. And I'm glad I'm glad that you said that, because I was when I first read the book, like I'm sitting there reading it and I'm like going through, and it never felt like I got to the end and I'm starting to write and I'm like, how many pages was that? Because like you get to that point when you're doing a review where you're like, that seemed like a lot for, you know, a standard 25 pages ish. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, that's why it's over. All right, I like this. And like, but it was so much information, but it wasn't overly informative, like to the point where you feel like it's like dragging you down. But it was also, the pace was amazing. You were like going scene to scene to scene, and you learn about her and her backstory and her struggles. You learn about a little bit about his backstory, not enough, because once again, that's kind of the beauty of that. Mm-hmm. And then you see this melding together, and then the premise of where the story is actually going to go. And it's like, whoa, that's cool. And then the final page hits, and if you're not hooked out by the final page of like, oh, this is really where the series is going, just wait and see. And I promise you will be.
Oh yeah, exactly. It moves so fast, but yet you don't get lost in it. And it's not like one overshadows the other. Like you get the whole piece to understand where you're going. You don't get the whole picture, but that's what we want in the first issue. And I think you and the team absolutely knocked it out of the park on this one. Like I cannot wait for the fan reaction for this one. So that's the one book they're going to need to pick up. But there also is a second book on Joey Esposito Day. We're just going to call it that July 1st, because obviously
I am fine with that.
Yeah, because obviously 2 major books coming out. The second one, Power Rangers Unlimited by Boom Studios. And you're working with Kenny Porter on this. How has the creative process been? Because, I mean, like we say, no spoilers. But again, how has this been?
This has been a dream come true, to be totally frank with you. You know, since starting in my comics journey in, 2007 or whenever that was, Power Rangers has always been like the bucket list. And when Boom got the license in 2016, I sent them a lot of annoying emails. I was like, hey man, let me tell you why I should do this, which like is not something you should do if you're an aspiring creator. Do not cold email people you don't know. But that's how desperate I was. And it took a little while, but eventually I did the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Zord Quest there, which was really fun. And that sort of led into working on Power Rangers Unlimited, which has just been truly a blast. I didn't know Kenny before Boom put us together on this book, but we hit it off right away. We're both huge fans. And as soon as we started talking about we both came at it as like, again, Boom came to us with, we're thinking Power Rangers Unlimited. It's like Justice League Unlimited, but Power Rangers. And that was sort of like their mission statement. but nothing beyond that. And so we developed like the sort of plot device of how this would work and why these Rangers are coming together and who is leading them and what's this new organization look like. So we were able to really approach it like, what is the Power Rangers book that we would make when we were like 12 and just like wanted to dump all the toys out on the table and do something totally crazy. And they let us do it. And it's been a blast. So I'm very excited for people to read it. It's a great palate cleanser after you read Killer Influences #1, because it's just a totally different vibe. It's, you know, a friend of mine who isn't typically a Power Rangers person, you know, which can be a barrier. He told me that issue 1 read like an awesome new #1 from Image in the 90s. And like, didn't matter that he didn't really know Power Rangers, just like really enjoyed like a cool action sci-fi heavy story. And so that was like really exciting to hear, because Kenny and I obviously were putting a lot of our Power Rangers love into it. There's a lot of Easter eggs, a lot of characters that haven't really been in the comics before, you know, but our whole intention is to really broaden the scope of what Power Rangers looks like in comics. So like, there's definitely stuff for the hardcore fans and long-term readers, but to hear that like a non-Power Rangers person was like into it was really gratifying. And I think that's also helped by the artists that we work with in this book. Alessio Zano and Federico Ceresa are trading off issues. So Alessio did our Free Comic Book Day issue and our #1 issue. And they're just both incredible artists. They're going to be superstars for sure. You know, I think following the tradition of like Dan Mora coming up from the Power Rangers books back in the day, like these guys are definitely the next class. You know, they're incredible. I'm so excited for people to see their work. Like, even if you hate me or hate Power Rangers, there's no way you can deny like the level of quality of the artwork in this book.
No,
First of all, who hates you?
Exactly,
That's the first
yeah,
question.
I don't know. There's that. But listen, there's plenty.
Well, if they are, they're the ones that are wrong. But no, the
Thank you.
artwork is tremendous and
Yeah.
definitely wow. And I like what you said there, because I mean, I obviously have a working knowledge of the Power Rangers because I'm a millennial. It came out
Sure.
in my area, my wheelhouse. But I was never a big Power Rangers fan. I'm not, nothing against it. It wasn't like crapping on it. Just it came when it dropped. It was like literally when I was starting to get into other things.
Yeah.
Like, so because I'm in that elder millennial group. But
Yeah.
I still always appreciated, like, you know, if it was on, you know, I caught it. So I know I have like a working familiarity with the concept. But I'm reading the book and I'm going, oh wow, like you didn't need to. Like, it's great if you are a hardcore fan,
Yeah.
you're gonna recognize the different kinds of things that you're seeing, the Easter eggs, if you will, without spoiling it. But if you're not, you're gonna be like, oh, this is still a cool book. Like,
Awesome.
you will pick up, you can pick up and follow it. I kind of, I think I said to you, to Ken, I should say, you know, obviously you got to use my words here. It was kind of like when J.J. Abrams did Star Trek.
Yep.
Like there's that part where you're like, oh, you know, if you weren't a Star Trek fan, you still could enjoy that movie because it gave you everything you needed to know. But if you were a Star Trek fan, it gave you a little bit more. And
Yeah.
I think that there's a real that really comes out in this issue, especially this first issue.
Thank you. I love that.
But now this time I get to actually ask my famous question.
Yes.
So you kind of danced around it. What is the elevator pitch for Power Rangers Unlimited?
Power Rangers Unlimited. Okay. So, I mean, to Boom, we did pitch it as we're dumping all the action figures out. Like, that's literally in the document. Like, this is like the concept of the series. But in terms of like, as a reader, I would expect this is about a new organization within the Power Rangers universe called Power Rangers Unlimited. It's led by an older Trini Kwan, the original Mighty Morphin Yellow Ranger, who is now the Striking Tiger Unlimited Ranger. And it's headed up by a mysterious leader called the Operator, who's just sort of, you know, a hologram. And you'll find out more about him in issue 1. But right now we don't know who he is or what he wants. And essentially there's a great evil coming in the universe, and Power Rangers Unlimited calls Rangers from across time and space in, you know, new team formations, new Zord combinations, new, you know, people meeting who may not like each other, people meeting who may be, surprising best friends or love interests. And so it's a way for all these 30 years of Power Rangers teams to mix and match with each other while telling a story that has an emotional core tied to not only Trini, but the Rangers as an organization, and gets to explore sort of pushing the boundaries of what a Power Ranger story can look like. For example, every issue we're making sort of a different genre. So issue number 1 is very martial arts heavy. We talked about the raid a lot. It's just like kind of like a self-contained battling your way through a bunch of bad guys kind of issue to really set the premise and the tone. But then we have, a heist story. We have like a post-apocalyptic Mad Max kind of story. We've got a horror slasher story. We're going to have a lot of different things of that variety that, kind of harkens back to some of my old favorite episodes of the show where they would be in the Old West or some like random kind of whatever set happened to be available that day.
Yeah.
We're in the Old West today. And these episodes that are like totally genre but still Power Rangers and still work for like the campy premise that it has. So we wanted to take that, but like kind of take it a little bit more seriously and intentionally, and use these missions and these genres as ways to bring in, well, this character would be really good at this, so maybe they should, be on that mission. So in the same way that Trini and the operator are selecting Rangers for their missions, that's kind of like how Kenny and I operate. We come up with like, what would be a cool mission? And then what are the personality traits or the special skills of particular characters from across these 30 years that would be suited to such a thing, or perhaps would be a challenge to them of accomplishing this thing, or, what would make them butt heads with a different character and things like that. And just like really getting in the weeds and talking about it and figuring out like what could make the coolest story possible. And so every issue is its own thing, but has a connecting arc that will, be revealed throughout the series.
Yeah, and issue 1 is definitely, it feels like an event. Like
Thanks.
when you pick it up. I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm the biggest Power Rangers fan, but I do know a well amount of Power Rangers lore because I've covered so much of it for Boom. It is one that when I picked it up and I was reading it, I was like, okay, this feels different. Like it feels larger than life. And with what is going on, I think for doing that with a title and just how bold and ambitious a take this is, it works. And it really drives home that point that, like, for anybody, like we're just saying, he's not as well versed, but it definitely connects with him. And as somebody, if you are very well versed in this universe, you're going to be, absolutely head exploding of just what is going on here. And to have that kind of vibe too, especially with how long this, franchise has been around since the 90s. What do you, for your perspective, what do you think it is about the Power Rangers franchise that keeps fans invested all this time after?
I mean, I think like high level, cool costumes, robots, fights, cool monsters. Like I think that it's just like a winning combination for any variety of things that we love, whether it's Power Rangers or superhero comics or, whatever, He-Man, like it's all kind of, it's just that it's got that like toyetic nature to it. But I think what keeps it or has kept it so prevalent is its willingness to reinvent itself, and I think part of that is like based on the nature of how Power Rangers as a show was constructed, based on old Sentai footage and all this sort of thing. But, particularly once you get past the quote Zordon era, which is sort of like the lingering story from those original seasons until they kind of moved away from it in Power Rangers Lost Galaxy and moving into Lightspeed Rescue, and basically like 2000 and on. They really commit to this, like a new cast every year, new theme every year, new character dynamics. I mean, of course, it's all in service of like new toys, but I think as a result, like everyone has something that they love. Everyone has seasons they don't love as much as other seasons, or have characters they wish could have interacted or interacted more. So I think just like the quantity of it, but also the quality of it across these many years, it's sort of almost like I look at it kind of like a Degrassi in a weird way, and that it's like, that cast has changed, but it's always this core concept of like these kids in high school, right? And Power Rangers is the same way. Sometimes they're like high school kids, sometimes they're young adults with other careers who end up being Power Rangers. Sometimes it's like magic based, sometimes it's science based, you know, and just like finding new ways to sort of riff on the central theme of a team and teamwork and leadership and all that stuff. It's just really, I don't know, it's forever enduring. And as long as there's like cool robots that fight cool monsters,
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's ever going to really go away. But I do acknowledge also that like this is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately since working on Power Rangers. But you know, the Mighty Morphin era is sort of, when you talk about pop culture imprint, people who don't know Power Rangers know the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers,
True.
right? Because it was such like a cultural moment in time. In '93, it was like in newspapers, it was everywhere. It was on the news because teachers thought it might be too violent, whatever, like all that stuff. It was a real cultural shift. And I think for younger folks who grew up with Power Rangers just always being a thing that was on TV, harder to have that perspective of like life before Power Rangers and life after. But I think that's sort of where we're coming from with the Striking Tiger Ranger, who is the original Mighty Morphin Ranger, as sort of like an in for people who know who the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers are, but maybe have no idea about the larger world. At least you have like this emotional connection to like, okay, there's this original character here that is introducing me to like the wider scope of everything in this universe. So I think we're able to like take advantage of its sort of place in pop culture to service our narrative and like the other characters that we want to introduce to people.
Oh yeah, definitely can see that. And then, like when you were saying that, it's kind of like the weird part is it keeps its core being consistently reinvented. So like it's just enough different that you realize that it's something new, but it's also like you have to stay true to that. And I'm listening, as a big kaiju fan, there is nothing better than just, you know, kaiju and battles. I mean, that's
it.
You can't. That's part of where you're going to get it here. But like something you kept going back to is that when you were pitching all this to Boom, it just kept getting larger. Like, hey, I'm going to dump out all the toys, and hey, they haven't said no yet. Just keep going. Like, has there anybody anything, not just from like the writing standpoint from you and Kenny, but even from the artist, has there been anything that they've got given, without spoiling anything, they give you a little bit of pushback? Like, no, you can't really do that.
No, honestly.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, we're just like, what if we did this? And like send the email and they're like, sounds great. And we're like, wow, okay, let's do it.
It's almost like, are you tempted to write something like, hey, listen, let's just see how far we can go. Like, just like,
kind of, honestly. So like, you know, also like as a quick detour, like in my day job life, like in a past life, I worked a lot in like brand. When I worked at Paramount, it was a lot of like dealing with like Big Brother, for example, and like certain just branding things, like how a logo needs to appear or how they refer to certain, you know, like they're not contestants, they're house guests, things like that. So I have a pretty good understanding of like how brand teams work and like the things that they're looking for in an approval process, which I do feel like has helped me in like this license writing work, kind of like navigate, like I kind of know what they're thinking. I know the kinds of things that like they're going to be like, no, absolutely not. And what I found is that as long as you're true to the franchise and the characters and what's come before and what like, you know, is known about them, even if you're like presenting a new angle or twisting it a little bit, I think as long as they can see and understand your intention and where you're going and why you're doing the thing that you're asking them to let you do, I think people are more receptive to it. So I do find that having that in mind is helpful for me in dealing with situations like that. But all that being said, like everything that we've pitched, like even some things surprisingly so, we're just like we thought this was like, we're gonna like just test the waters and see like what we can get away with. But so far, so good.
See where the line is.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe us, once again, this has become a trend for these two books. Wait till you get to that final page, and you'll find out. No spoilers, but this is a reason to read the book. You'll find out how far the line can actually be pushed, and then some.
I'm very excited.
You talk about mic drop moments. I mean,
Thank
we
you.
have them in both books.
And I also want to say that when we're talking about that stuff, it's not in a sense of like, dark and gritty or like Power Rangers, but like mature and violent. It's like still Power Rangers, but just like kind of pushed in a direction of like the Green Lantern Corps, or like something where it's like a massive organization that's being run by like a governing body who is Trini and the operator. And Betamax, who you'll meet in issue 2, who is her little droid assistant.
You always love the droid assistants, but on top of that, no, that is a good distinction. This is not an adult version of Power Rangers. This is it's Power Rangers. Like, and that is a good distinction, because I think some people think that when you're changing things and you're doing this, the X, Y, and Z, it's just like, oh yeah, they just made it adult. Like, no, it's still the Power Rangers. It's just a whole different atmosphere than what you think that you're used to, I should say.
So that said, what has been your favorite Power Rangers era team character to work on for this series? If you had to pick one,
a great question. I have had a great time digging into some of the characters from Power Rangers in Space, because issue 2 focuses specifically on Andros, who's the Red Space Ranger from that season, and his sister Crone, who, in that season is a villain, but then we find out she's brainwashed and she gets reformed and she becomes the Lost Galaxy Pink Ranger down the line. So we have like a cool adventure with them teaming up. But then also, in that era, specifically coming out of the original Mighty Morphin era, there are characters who I'm very intrigued by. TJ is a great example, who, was handpicked by Tommy to be the Red Turbo Ranger when the sort of cast change happened during Power Rangers Turbo, but then became the Blue Space Ranger in the following season. And so finding moments like that where, I'm sure they wouldn't consider a demotion, but as, a fan who looks at the Red Rangers as like, they're typically the leaders of the team. You are a Red Ranger and then you become a Blue Ranger. Like, is there a psychological element to that where you're like thinking, oh shit, I got demoted. Like, why did this happen? Like, what is Andros doing better that I'm doing to be promoted to leader so quickly? So like digging into those sort of like things that they would never get into on the show, because it's 20 minutes long and it's for children and they want to see action and explosions and stuff. But I really like thinking about the sort of psychological toll of essentially being a teenager with the world counting on you to not get blown up by any random evil space alien, and what happens if you're not appreciated as much as you might think you should be. And so like all that stuff sort of comes into play. And I find that era, like transitioning from the original team to like these new iterations, to be particularly fruitful with that stuff. Then we also, have an issue with the Wild Force Yellow Ranger, which I think is just a really fun season to go back to. And so it's just been a blast. And honestly, like one of the best parts of this job is when we're coming up with like the team and, oh, there's a character from Operation Overdrive, which I haven't seen since it was on TV. So I guess it's just time to like revisit a bunch of those, and then that makes me more excited to like bring in other characters from that series because I had forgotten about X, Y, or Z, so it's just kind of like a never-ending snowball, which is a great place to be as like a someone coming up with stories and being creative about this world. It's helpful when there's such like rich texture and such an abundance of characters to draw from, that when you put them together, it will always just like be a little bit different. And I think that's really cool.
Right on, and you can definitely see it.
Yes,
like that's the
100%.
Cannot wait for more issues. Obviously, once again, just like I said before, don't just go and pick up a copy if you haven't already ordered it. Make sure you put it on your pull list. You're not going to want to miss issues of Power Rangers Unlimited as well. But you are somebody who is synonymous with indie comics. Let's be honest, taking one of the greatest. I stand by this, greatest independent comic books of all time in the Pedestrian.
It's a fact.
I will stand by that. I understand that I'm biased because
we are biased, my friend.
And I've given the story a million times, so I will spare the story about the meaning and what the book means to me personally. However, indie comics, I have been saying this, I've been a champion of it, Ken's been a champion of it, I know you're a champion of it, has been going through, I have to say, an amazing, no pun intended for Boom, because we're talking about Boom Studios a minute ago, but Boom lately, because it seems like we are getting a little bit of everything. We've got a lot of horror. We've got a lot of true crime, which you're now going into as well. We've got a lot of just across the board, original characters, original concepts. Even the superhero portion of the indie comic scene is more robust, if you will.
Mhm.
So much so that, you know, even DC Comics is getting in on the indie buzz too, with Vertigo, and as well as pushing the envelope with their actual superhero lines. I just think that the state of the indies is really great. But from you, as somebody who is a creator in independent comics, what do you think the state of the indie comic scene is in 2026?
I think that there's more great comics per capita or whatever than there has ever been. You know, I think part of that is, of course, the internet opening things up to more people, just like across the board, more voices. But I think also, like, it just seems to me that people are more interested in just doing their shit than trying to like get published somewhere, which is like the best way to get published somewhere is just to do your shit until someone notices, you know. I know you guys are wrestling fans, so I always just refer to the Cody Rhodes, like, make yourself undeniable, which is like, you know, a silly wrestling story, but also it's kind of not for him. Like, that was a journey that he had and turned into a story. But I think like taking that element of like, okay, well, you don't want what I'm selling, fuck you, I'm going to make you want what I'm selling, is like an attitude that I don't say that explicitly to people who tell me no. But like The Pedestrian, as an example, is that like, that was like a book that everyone said no to, and we're like, fuck you guys, I'll show you that it works. And guess what? It worked, and that it is what it is. Like, we were correct, and I wouldn't say that it convinced anyone else that like I would be correct a second time, which I thought it might. Doesn't work that way, it turns out. But I think just like believing in your ideas and believing in yourself and making it happen by hook or by crook is, you know, that's the sort of benchmark of someone who's serious about doing this, you know, because it's not an easy journey if you're doing things yourself. Any indie comics person will tell you, whether that's like, you know, the expense of going to shows and setting up, and or just like the physical wear and tear of sitting at your drawing desk all day and doing everything yourself. Whatever your experience is, like, you're doing so much work in indie comics that when you get to a place where you're like being published by someone, you almost feel like, oh, a reprieve, like a relief, like, okay, there's going to be somebody else here to help me. That is also not true, because it's still just going to be you just like pushing the thing as hard as you can, you know, because resources are limited, the audience is limited, time is limited, all that stuff. So like doing your own indie books, I would say, helps prepare you more for the realities of doing work for hire or a book at sort of like a different level, you know, because it is still going to be all that self-promo work and project management and all the stuff that you deal with as an indie creator. It's going to be different, and you will have more help, but I think you'll be more successful if you're able to wear a lot of hats and do a lot of different things. And I think starting in the indie space requires you to do that. You have to figure things out. You have to learn how to letter. You have to like understand coloring. You have to know how to deal with a printer. You know how to lay out page counts and sort of like the editorial production side of things. And all that stuff will help you when you're at a professional publisher doing professional level work. And it's just like, it's a great way to have fewer people telling you no if you just do it yourself.
It works. And I love the when you brought up the Cody Rhodes thing. That's why that story, the story, if you will, resonates with people. And I will say this: if Cody Rhodes doesn't, when it's all said and done, doesn't write a book just called Undesirable to Undeniable, and highlight just that mentality, I think he's missing out. Because you could do it, like, and we bring that up even internally when we're talking about what we're doing, and I think that anybody can take that from that. And it's just cool to like have that. That's the attitude you have to. If you don't want something, just keep doing it, and eventually, you know, it's going to hit. As long as you believe in it and you're putting in the work, you're going to get paid for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not saying just paid in like money, but it'll pay off. You'll
It's
get
true. You know, like the thing that I've really realized after so many years of doing this is often it's just a war of attrition. You know, people who I started with who are still doing it, doing fine. Like they're crushing it, they're writing books that everyone loves, all that kind of stuff. And there's people who I started out with who just, you know, for whatever reason stopped or quit, you know, which like not judging them for, of course, you know, if it was for family reasons or financial reasons, whatever. But I do think that if you hang in there, even during these periods where you're like, what the fuck? Why am I doing this? Killing myself. This is so stupid. No one cares. But if you like go through all that stuff and you're still excited about making comics, then you can be in it for the long haul and you can be healthy doing it, I think. Once you sort of just like wrap your head around, oh, I'm not going to be, I don't know, Stephen King or whatever, you know, like I'm going to be a working artist who's writing stories that are important to me and, you know, working on characters that I love and working with friends that I love, you know, like that has to be sort of like the work has to be what it's about versus like the perceived success of the work. Because it's just never going to be at the level that you think you want or deserve. So like at the end of the day, it has to just be about your satisfaction in creating something or working with the people that you're working with.
100%. So before we let you get out of here, we just got a couple more fun questions for you. So
Sure.
taking it back to the Killer Influences talk, what is your favorite crime/horror story of all time?
Oh man. Okay. Are we talking like true crime or just like a crime story? You know what? I'm gonna say one that's related to Killer Influences, which I have in front of me here, which is Anne Rule's The Stranger Beside Me.
Okay.
It's kind of like a real originator in terms of true crime writing. I would say like this and In Cold Blood are like very by Truman Capote are very influential. But Anne Rule, essentially, she was a writer who worked at a help center, you know, like a crisis line center back in the day, and she volunteered there next to someone who she would later learn was Ted Bundy, and then wrote this book about her friendship with Ted Bundy throughout everything that he was doing and sort of how she like became aware of it as he, you know, was arrested and through his court dates and all that stuff, and just like putting the pieces together of like the Ted that she knew as like a close friend and the Ted Bundy that everyone else knows, is just very fascinating. And she's written, you know, a bunch of other true crime books, but this one is obviously just like inherently just fucking a wild ride.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I'm processing it right now when you're talking about it, like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I'm going to add that
Awful,
to my list.
but it's good stuff.
Definitely adding that to my reading list because that sounds wow.
Yeah, like where do you go from there?
You think you have a crazy story about your work life, and then all of a sudden you're like, by the way, you know, I used to work next to Ted Bundy. We were friends. Like, what? Like, tell me more. Like, oh, okay.
It's brutal. And I think what I really love about this book is that it gets into the thing that I think is lost sometimes in the less successful true crime writing is the nuance that we were talking about. Like, yes, Ted Bundy objectively fucked up, did terrible things, but it is also true that like she had like a close relationship with him, or that he had a close relationship with like this woman that he loved and her kid, and you know, like there are other sides to these horrible monsters. Or like Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, was like a minister or something in his church. You know, like there's like just so many fascinating sides to the story that just telling like the despicable acts that they did isn't the full story, though it's the most important or the most memorable, I would say. But I do think like understanding like how they can get away with something is because they're like very charismatic, very respectful, very, you know, helpful and supportive of certain people in their lives who just like could not possibly put those pieces together. And I think this book is a great example of that.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where everything's not black and white. You know, the world is full of gray. Like everything was gray. So you can't just be like, oh, well, and yes, don't get me wrong. They were evil people. They did a lot of evil things, but there was also a second part to them. Nobody, not a single one of them was, oh, they were always this person. There's all, I always like to make the joke. Whenever there's something that happens, whether it's a big time serial killer or even just something that happens, right? You always will have the news interview. Somebody says, oh, I knew them. They were really nice.
Right.
Like they're always that person. Like if you really think about it, there's never been a time, except for like somebody who maybe was a recluse or something, like the Unabomber. Outside of that, because he didn't have neighbors, but most people, you'll have at least a neighbor or somebody who was like, or a coworker, like, oh, they were super nice. Like I got along with them really well. I can't. I
it's shocking.
Doing this.
People go to great lengths to hide their true selves, and I think that's what true crime is really great about, unmasking. Another, I don't know if you've ever read any of John Douglas's books, but he is like that. He's like a famous FBI profiler. Like the Mindhunter show is based on like his sort of research and stuff. He's written a lot of books, sort of about the psychology of killers, and there's one that he has called The Killer Across the Table. It's like essentially his interviews with some really notorious killers about like how they are perceiving themselves during these acts and like why they do certain things. And it's just all like, it's just very fascinating. And like on top of that, of course, they're non-reliable narrators. You can't like totally trust them, but like you do want to do your due diligence to try to understand them as best as possible, because they are a danger to society and to themselves. But it's bleak shit. Like, you gotta interject with some like superhero comics in between, or just some light fun fiction of some kind. But yeah.
No, I agree with you. I've always had that draw too, because it's that psychological element. Like you're like, how does somebody, because it really is. It's like being two separate people, and how do you balance that, and how does that work out for them? And like, not because I want to do it, I just want to understand. Because personally, I don't understand how you could do that. Like, it's the same thing with cults. Like, I don't understand how people like hear the pitch and go, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. Right. But obviously that happens. And you see very intelligent people who take that pitch. You know what I mean?
Because there's like all these other factors that go into like someone making a decision like that we don't consider from the outside, because it's too nuanced. We don't consider like the relationship they just got out of, or the financial hole that they've found themselves in, or like, becoming estranged from their son or daughter, or whatever it is. Like there's always just like extra shit that isn't in the details of like, this person drank the Kool-Aid, you know what I mean? But like they had a whole life before they got to that point. And I think that's interesting to unpack, of like how someone falls victim to that, or how someone is so good at selling them something that doesn't actually exist. True. So all that shit fascinates me.
Me too. So count me amongst that. But I want to end the questions with something self-serving, not only for you, but for me as a fan. And that is, if we could cross over The Pedestrian with either of these new titles that you're writing, which one would you pick and why?
That's a great question. Inherently, I'm like, well, Power Rangers, obviously, because we have the Laser Titans, and that would be fun. I think it would be weirder to do it with killer influences, right? Like that just seems like they don't belong, which makes me want like put Kira and Kylie together, and like have Melvin babysit the twins from
oh my god, yes.
That would be,
because I don't think he would hurt them. I just think he would be like supremely annoyed by them, and which would inspire him to go out later and kill somebody else. So there you go. That's my
I think he'd be fascinated at first by them, and then they would get annoying, and then it'd be like, okay, as soon as they pick him up, it's like he just kills the first person he sees. Doesn't even
they would like figure out his MO like immediately, and he would just be like, well, fuck. These 11-year-olds got it.
Yeah. But like we say, these books coming out on July 1st, fans, wherever you're catching this on YouTube, wherever you're catching a podcast form, you need to get these in your hands. Killer Influence is going to be a monster hit for IDW Crime and IDW Publishing. It is definitely not your average serial killer story by any stretch of the imagination. And by that ending page, you're going to be like, what did I just read? And you're going to want to dive back into it, because it is going to capture you in its web and definitely not let you go. Then you go pick over Power Rangers Unlimited. And it is an event, like I alluded to. It is something that if you're not well versed in the lore of the Power Rangers, you don't have to worry about it. You're going to get caught up in a kick-ass action story that is going to have some curveballs thrown at you. You're not expecting any which way, shape, or form. But if you're a super diehard fan of the series or the fandom, oh my God, buckle in, get ready for the wild ride that is going to be taking place here. Joey, thank you so much for coming on the show. We can't stress enough for everybody to go buy these books and go buy The Pedestrian as well. We definitely have to catch up with you after these series come out.
Thank you guys so much. It's always a pleasure, and I love having my ego fed. So thank you.
Anytime, because obviously with books like this, it is our pleasure to read them and preach about them. And on behalf of Rich and myself, thank you again for checking out another edition of Fanlight Zone Presents. We'll see you next time.
It's such waste of time, swiping left and swiping right on people you could know. 'Cause anyone who's worth a damn be worth way more than a picture could ever show. You could find the right light, find the right angle, and never find your soul. And it can feel like a losing battle, and this plot is full of holes. This modern way of finding love just makes me feel so alone. And I can't be the only one sick of staring at my phone. So look up, talk to me, a better way to spend our energy. Just look up, talk to me. We don't have to float alone on the open sea. Don't know that I believe in the old time fable. Everyone has just one true love. All I know is you're across this table, and you're all I'm thinking of. So look up, talk to me, a better way to spend our energy. Just look up, talk to me. We don't have to float alone on the open sea. Talk to me. Talk to me. It's such waste of time, swiping left and swiping right on people you could know.